definitely need to, you don't need our notebook to start bullet journaling. The idea is even the notebook itself should be something that you love. When I first released Bullet Journal, it was a personal project. It was a little passion project, and I put it together, and I had no idea what it would become. But over time, it very quickly proved to be very valuable to people, and that's when it really reinvigorated me and motivated me to become better at teaching it. And the system that you see today isn't something that I came up with overnight. It's something that took me years and years, decades. Like, I've been thinking about this more or less since high school.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, not in the way that you see it now, but bits and pieces of my 40 plus books over there, like, you see how it's slowly evolved. And the thing that really struck me is that I've never really lived without it. Like, I don't know what it's like to live without a bullet journal anymore, right? So I never realized how much it could help people. And as soon as I realized that it could help people, I started to protect it. And then I started to protect it because I wanted to maintain the integrity of the system. Like, I see a lot of people teaching the bullet journal, which is fine, but a lot of it.
What do you mean teaching?
Well, I mean, so if you go to YouTube, for example, you'll see hundreds of thousands of tutorials about how to bullet journal, which is fine, because I think it's not fine. It's really exciting to see how people have taken my system and mapped it onto their own life, and then help explain it to other people through their eyes. I think that's wonderful. But when people start to try to make it seem official, or like they try to monetize it, then people start thinking that this is the source. So for me, it was really important for people to realize that this information is like a lifetime's worth of work, and I teach only what I found to work. And bullet journal, as you see it today, is decades worth of failing. It's decades worth of failure. I tried so many different things, and what I finally taught, like, here is a collection of things that really ended up working consistently for me. And that's the video that you ran into. Yeah. So in addition to that, so that's why it became trademarked. And that's also why we have the notebook now, because for me, it's always about figuring out tools that will help the community. And I knew when I was bullet journaling, I'm like, I really wish this book just had page numbers, because I don't want to write page numbers all the time. Or I really wish this had like 3 bookmarks. And then I had an opportunity to partner with the company Life to 'em that makes my notebooks, and I got to design the notebook of my dreams. Do you need the notebook? Not at all. It just makes it a little bit easier, and it happens to be the notebook that has best survived me. Okay. So the reason I partnered with them is because I use them. Like, yes, it's high quality and all that, and that's fine, and that's great. And I'm probably a terrible marketing person for this, but the only thing that really matters to me is that it survives. Yeah. Like, it just needs to get out of the way. When I use my notebook, like, I use them really hard. Like, I throw them in my bag. They just have to work. That's it. And this notebook always just worked. It put up with my life, and that's kind of why I offer it. It's something I stand behind. But at the end of the day, the system is free for people to use on their own, and they always will be. So everything on top of that is just me trying to figure out ways to provide more tools to the community, because there's so many different ways that it can be used, and there's so many different needs that people have. And that's really my challenge right now, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I do feel like there's still a lot of like a big community and a lot of people contributing. And when you go to bullet journal, to the blog, you have the show and tell, and it's still very selective there, that you can only find a couple of, say, modules or ways that people really took the system to the next level, or at least improved it in some case. And I feel like you were very selective on those, and I really like that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that email you and send you stuff that is not that good. But again, it's not about being good or not. It's just, if it's working for them, it's working for them, and it's enough. And yeah. And I did, one of the things that I did, one of my favorite books is The 7 Habits of highly effective people. And one of the things that he actually shows you a system like to keep track of your to-dos and like a schedule. And one thing I really liked was that he first starts with identifying what's important for you, either if you are like personal development or a boyfriend, if you are a family member, and just trying to identify something that you can do in that day or in that week towards that goal or that role. And every time I have the monthly log, I do that. So that's again, it works for me, but it doesn't have to work for everyone. And that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. And chances are that at some point you'll find something that works even better for you, or you will change it. I mean, one thing that I always find fun is that I'm also in the personal development space just as a fan. You know, I'm always reading and trying to learn, and it's been really exciting to see how I can plug other people's ideas and concepts into bullet journaling. And it's not a if or else, you know, this kind of thing. It's not a binary system. Like, you can use different things. You can plug it in. Like, for example, one thing that's very popular is mood tracking.
Okay.
That's something that I didn't really do at all, at least not in that case. And there's like hundreds of different kinds of trackers at this point. And what's really nice about it is because I've created the bullet journal to be modular, you can it doesn't have to be linear. You can use whatever pieces really work for you. It also, because of that, the happy accident is that you can also plug things into it. And that's really exciting for me to see as well. And part of the reason is I can see how creative people are and all these great ideas they have, but also in my personal life, if I'm like, okay, now I want to start tracking this, or I'm going to start working on this project, all of a sudden my bullet journal becomes a completely different tool in many ways. It still works on the same foundation and the different pieces work together, but it doesn't prevent me from experimenting. And I feel like that's an incredibly important part about figuring out what's effective.
Yeah, yeah. So are you mood tracking right now?
I'm not mood tracking. One thing that I did add is gratitude log. So okay. I try to write down 2 things that I'm grateful for every day, which sounds really easy, but once you've been doing it for like 4 months and you do it twice a day, it's interesting because it makes you really consider everything in your life and like looking for something to be grateful for. And that practice starts to transcend the pages, which is what I really like. It really kind of boosts your attitude, even like, especially when things aren't going well, which they won't. Like, no matter how organized you will be, like, life will just throw something at you. It's terrible or sad or completely unexplainable. But I feel like, at least with the gratitude, I found that even in these dark times, like, I still can find something. Like, I'm stealing this quote. You can't be grateful for everything, but you can't be grateful for everything, but you can always find something to be grateful for. You know, and then I feel like over time that starts to adjust your attitude as well. So that's a small thing that I put in there. Threading was something that I didn't develop. That's also something that I added into the bullet journal, and it's stuck. And then I've tried other things that I've seen, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. It's always about iterating, right? So you test something and then you see how effective it is. And if it's effective, great. And if not, you move on to the next thing. And this framework just happens to make that really simple.
Yeah. And at least, you have a framework to apply action to. And at least you are doing something, and it doesn't really matter if it's good or not, as long as you are walking forward. Is okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like part of what I love about the analog is once you put that mark down on paper, it doesn't, like, chances are it's not going to be perfect, and your notebooks will be sloppy, and then you're kind of embracing how imperfect we are, you know. And I feel like that's also helpful when we type everything and
everything is pretty
and everything's digital. You forget that at the end of the day we are human, but it's how we get up and move forward that really can define us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a really important part. And part of that process, at least for me, is consistently logging my progress. I see what steps I've taken to move forward consistently, which keeps me aware of the things that I have to be working on, but also allows me to reflect on how my actions actually impacted the goal.
Yeah. Were you always like this? So focused, so like forward thinking, or do you think it's like a byproduct of using the journal for a very, very long time?
Well, when I was young, I had really bad learning disabilities. So organization was something that was really challenging for me. So I feel that I had to force myself to think about it more than other people. And that's something that I've continued to do for as long as I can remember. And I guess because it's something that though I don't have learning disabilities anymore, the idea of organization and really making an impact is something that just fascinates me on a very deep personal level. And so even though it didn't come naturally to me, it is something that fascinates me. And that's why I think that bullet journal was really helpful, because I'm a user. I'm also someone who keeps testing it out, seeing what works. And I shared the bullet journal because that's what worked for me, and that's exactly what I continue to do. One thing that bullet journaling did allow me to realize is that I don't have to depend on other people to succeed. One thing that I would love everyone to know about bullet journaling is that it has the potential to empower you. It lets you solve your own problems by critically thinking about them. Like, okay, so here's the issue. What are the steps that I can take? And people really underestimate the power of just being able to do that. Will it solve your learning disability? Probably not, but it will make them easier. Like it didn't for me, but it did allow me to account for them, and it did allow me to make progress, and it did allow me to thrive in my own way over time. Like, did my weaknesses go away? No, but I was able to compensate for them because I was able to identify them. Exactly. And I wouldn't make the same mistakes over and over again. And if I knew that something was going to be challenging or difficult, then I could at least prepare for that. It's a process that allows you to learn a lot more about yourself, just because it's, at least for me, it was the only tool I ever had that even encouraged me to do that. Like, when's the last time that somebody sat down and taught you how to think about yourself? It seems strange and it seems self-indulgent, but it's really important. Yeah. Like, how do you feel about how this is going? What do you think you could do better next time? Like, very small, tiny questions, but you do it every single day, you start to accumulate knowledge. You start to be able to develop your intuition over time. Like, ooh, this is probably going to be pretty hard for me, so I got to do this stuff. Or this is probably going to be really interesting, so all these other things are going to go away, so I can focus on this.
I did feel like self-awareness is probably the best skill that you can cultivate, because I think it's definitely a skill, because you do have to train. And with bullet journal also I do journaling, so I don't do it every day. I just do it when I feel like doing that. I really feel that I have to have that internal conversation, and not just internal conversation, but actually put it into words, that it makes it real. And when things are in paper, then you can reread them and really think, do I really feel like this? Does this actually make sense? So having that helicopter view of the situation, that actually looking at your thoughts, literally looking at your thoughts, and and then making adjustments based on that. Because life is like, I feel like with work I'm very stressed, and I don't have time to think about, okay, I'm feeling like this, or this problem is happening, what can I do? And just finding that time to just stop and just think about me for a second. And these moments come more now that I'm journaling, and especially when I'm migrating to a new month, really I have to go back, physically go back and look at all the points that didn't become across.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that long form journaling also is an incredibly effective tool. And that's like a perfect example of how, I started reading a lot about expressive journaling, expressive writing, which is exactly that, where you just kind of write about what you're feeling just to get it out, whether it's right or wrong. Like it doesn't matter. It's just for you to be able to feel it for a second. And that's something I was able to plug into my bullet journaling practice right away. And like yourself, I don't do it all the time, but when there's something I'm trying to work out that I'm having a hard time resolving, then it's an incredibly effective technique. And to your point, it's also really interesting. One thing that I really love about having a physical notebook is that a lot of times it's the first opportunity for you to see a thought, right? It's like we have, 50,000 thoughts a day, something like that. And probably a good amount of them are giving you problems at any given time. A lot of your thoughts aren't just like how wonderful everything is, and being able to take these thoughts out and see them on paper and actually start to work with them. Like, what can I do? What does this actually look like? And by writing it down, it's also your first chance to really name it, to define a thought. It's because sometimes thoughts are just feelings. Sometimes they're just like a part of a thought. Like something's upsetting you, but you don't really know what, and you try to write it down and you start to articulate it. And that's a really powerful process. It's helped me define a challenge. And like once you define a challenge, it makes it significantly easier to start figuring out a solution to it or figuring out ways to working with it.
Yeah, really reminds me of your TED talk about living intentionally and just making sure that you have that time to identify what's important for you. I mean, where do you want to go? I mean, moments like a few days I like an Instagram post about if you don't know where you are sailing, you will always be lost. It's something like that in the ship, and yeah, just finding where you want to go and doing the necessary steps to make sure you are in that path. And I mean, yeah, journaling or bullet journaling will at least set you in that direction if you are living in intentionally, so you are actually thinking about these things. Because I do feel that majority of the people don't really go through life and they don't really stop and think, what do I like I don't know, probably it happens more in the subconscious level and they kind of go that direction. But I do feel that if you directly focus your attention in that you will really things will just go faster.
Yes, I mean, it's a lot of really hard stuff to think about, because you're thinking about meaning and purpose and what's going to make you happy and all this stuff. And I think that it is hard stuff, and a lot of people are scared of not having an answer for that. And I think that's a really valid fear. But I think that you're going to be much more likely to come to that answer if you think about it a little bit every day. It doesn't have to be some like epic problem and, total existential crisis, but like every day you kind of just start checking in with yourself. Like, does this make sense? Is this something that I want to keep working on? Like, just, it's very small, but you're still pecking away at the same question. I feel like over time, if you continue to start thinking about it, or if you just have a practice of thinking about this stuff, then chances are you'll have a much better understanding of what it is that you do like and you don't like. And that's the thing, it changes over time. It's like, I don't like the same things as when I was 15. The things that were important to me then and the things that are important to me now are completely different. And a lot of that may seem really obvious, but a lot of times we kind of just coast,
Yeah.
It's like, I think family's important. That's fine. That's great. But how is it important? Like, what are you doing to bring it more into your life? And, once you have kids, like, how does that factor into it? Like, you're just constantly reassessing and checking in with yourself. That's all really that you're doing, because, when the really hard stuff happens, you will have at least some foundation of understanding, at least in my experience. Like, I'm not just like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like, I've been thinking about it every day for years, and what I want to do today is not the same thing I'm going to do next year or the year down. And that gives me a lot of comfort. Does it inoculate me from potential problems and then the disaster is going to happen. No, but at least lets me, in my experience, lets me pick up faster. Yeah. And it lets me like orient myself faster because I have some self-awareness, and that has come specifically from just checking in with myself regularly.
You definitely create a habit of checking in with yourself.
And I think that's the most important part, is making it part of your routine. It's a simple part. Just ask yourself, like, how do you feel about this? Not about life, but like, how do you feel about this thing you're working on? Just like bring it back to your current experience. It doesn't always have to be epic or meta or something. It's very practical. It's like, do I want to be working on this?
Yes or no?
Exactly. What tiny little action can I take now to make this a little bit better next time? Yeah. Just think small questions, they add up.
Because in that, talking about that tough decisions or tough moments in life, I know that you lost almost everything in like a flood or something like that.
Yes.
I mean, did you lose your bullet journal also?
I did. I lost a good amount of them, for sure.
Oh, shit. So what was the next step there? What was the conversation?
I mean, at first you look and you're like, I don't own any more things, right? It's water can really just take it away. Like,